Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath, and I'm joined by my friend Josh Jabkuga, the adapting writer of Bubba Hotep and the Cosmic Bloodsuckers, digital content creator for AEW, for All Elite Wrestling, coming up on the 1-year anniversary of their premiere on TNT, right?
Right.
Did I get that right? Digital content? You
freelance digital content creator.
But most importantly, contributor to SerialAtMidnight.com.
Absolutely, baby.
You have interviewed so many people for Serial. You have a Sugar Rush column that you've done. You've done interviews with people. Anyway, you are here because you are your fingers on the pulse of wrestling. You know what's going on, and we decided in 2019 to do. It was like our kickoff of the Halloween season 2019. We're like, you know what? Let's do a commentary for They Live. John Carpenter, one of my favorite directors. Roddy Piper, one of your favorite people. And I think people are going to hear all about how Roddy Piper is. This is where I insert the picture of you with Roddy Piper, where you guys are just lovingly looking into each other's eyes.
So, yeah, I mean, if people don't know, they're going to hear the full story. On,
so many Piper stories.
The commentary, but yes, I was lucky enough to meet an icon, and I can say the man is, at least in my world, an icon, and in many others, certainly. And we had a blast doing that commentary, if I recall, last year.
Yeah.
And back then, the world was a little bit different than it is today, wasn't it?
Man, what a difference a year makes. It wasn't even a year, it was like 6 months, and just everything caught on fire. And we thought the movie had so much to say about society in 2019, but I mean, what was relevant in 1988 was still relevant in 2019. Now it's 2020. There's pandemics going on. This is an election year, so there's all this added level of media subterfuge and like just the artifice.
Conspiracies. Yes. There's all these different things going on, and yeah.
This is the movie that was made for 2020. Like, it plays
2020.
It's crazy. So we did this commentary a year ago. It's been living on Patreon. It's an audio commentary. It's not a video commentary. So maybe we'll do video commentaries moving forward. But for stuff that's in the archive, load this up. Put this up on your phone or on your laptop. Watch the movie with us. This is meant to be like a communal experience. I think it's a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful that you were up for doing this. You're also on our Batman commentary. We did a commentary for Batman and several others that are still Patreon exclusives. Maybe we'll bring those over one day too. Anything else you want to hit before we just let the people enjoy the movie?
No, I just I want to thank you again for having me. We did Batman, we did The Rocketeer, and we did They Live, and I had fun doing all of them. I'm certainly gonna actually listen to this one again, because I want to see where my head was at and where we were. That's right, because when we recorded this, you were just kind of starting out with All Elite Wrestling. There's so much that was still in your future, and like we said, they're coming up on their 1-year anniversary date of the premiere on is TNT, and that's right. I was just sort of pivoting out, transitioning from comics a little bit.
Yeah.
And moving into doing freelance for AEW. Mm-hmm. And I'm fortunate enough because I've been with them since day one. And like you said, though, they're coming up on 1 year on TNT. So I'm looking forward to that. But until then,
now you're like a grizzled vet. You look back and you're like, oh, that guy didn't know what was coming yet.
Oh, jeez. That's right.
All right. Well, let's let the people get on with the show. Do you
do you have any bubble gum?
I don't. I'm all out of bubble gum, but I have my glasses.
I have my glasses.
This changes everything. All right, I see it for what it is. I see the world for what it is. You guys, you see it too. Put on your glasses, sit back, chew your bubble gum, and enjoy our commentary of the movie They Live. Guys, what's going on? Welcome to a Serial at Midnight commentary for the movie They Live from 1988, directed by John Carpenter and starring Roddy Piper. And I'm joined for this audio commentary by Joshua Jeb Kuga, a man who is more qualified to talk about anything related to Roddy Piper than anybody else that I know. Joshua, thank you so much for joining us. How's it going?
It's going awesome. Thanks for having me again, Heath.
You are very welcome. Yes, we recorded our Batman commentary, the 1989 Batman commentary for the Tim Burton movie, and that was a Patreon exclusive and is now available wide and free on the Serial at Midnight YouTube channel. So anybody who hasn't heard our Batman commentary, we both absolutely have a ton of affection for that movie, and I think we have affection for this movie too, but you bring a whole other level. I think people over the next 94 minutes or something like that, I think people are really going to discover why you were the man for this job.
We're going to have fun.
Yes. So but up front, I would also like to say that you, of course, got to give your credits list. You've sent me the press release of the things that I have to read. So you are a writer for IDW. You are a journalist for All Elite Wrestling, the company that is basically taking it toe-to-toe with Vince McMahon's WWE right now. And you have a long history of journalism in the pop culture atmosphere. Is that fair to say?
That's fair, and time permitting, I love to contribute to your site as well.
That is true. Yes, the Sugar Rush series and your column about, well, it's a review of Abominable, but it's also a defense of physical media, and that is still one of the most popular things on the Serial at Midnight website. So, thank you for that.
That's just because my mom keeps clicking it every day.
Well, thank your mom for us. Okay, so what we're going to do is I have the Shout/Scream Factory Blu-ray queued up. Past the FBI warning at the blank, it's going to be, when I hit play, it's going to be the Universal logo. And you are queued up to that digitally, correct?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay, so anybody that's doing this at home, we do try to sync these up. We are going to be screen specific. They're not, we're not going to be slaves to it. So we're going to count 3, 2, 1, play. And that is when we're going to kick this off. So are you ready for 3, 2, 1, play?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. 3, 2, 1, play. All right, I have a star field. There's the Earth. Welcome to Earth.
Look at that. It's not even flat either.
Well, it's just movies lie. The film is a lie at 24 frames a second. So it's flat, flat Earth. That's just abandon everything, throughout our flat Earth theories right at the beginning. I didn't know Heath and Josh were flat earthers. So, John Carpenter, let's talk about the man. This is, I think, one of his more underrated movies. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I would say it's because he was on such a hot streak, right? Mm-hmm. And then I feel like this was almost, for whatever reason, this was maybe at the end of it, maybe in the eyes of Hollywood, because I'm a huge fan. But
I think that's true. Yeah. That streak that started with, did it start with Halloween? Probably really started with Halloween, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you would, The Fog was more, I think, looking back years later, I think more people embraced it, right? But I'm not sure if that was a hit back in the day, was it?
Yeah, I don't think that it was. I don't think that it had the. Now I love it. It's one of my favorite Carpenter movies now, but I don't know that it. You're right. I don't think there's a lot of Dark Star fans out there either who are just like, oh right. Man, it all started with Dark. I mean, it did all start with Dark Star, but I don't. I feel like this flies. George Buck Flower. We got to talk about George Buck Flower. I feel like this one flies under the radar for a lot of people. Even Carpenter. I noticed Carpenter fans. Yeah. This kind of flies under the radar for a lot of people. And, it's a challenging movie as far as it's not necessarily horror. It's not, a lot of Carpenter movies kind of walk this line that he loves action. He's a product of his influences. You see, he pops up on these talking head documentaries, and it's very clear he loves Westerns. He loves action movies that he grew up with. He loves, all this stuff goes into the sauce. So we try to put, like Carpenter gets put into the horror director camp, but I think there's a lot of other things in his movies. This movie particularly is hilarious. I think this is a very funny Carpenter movie. A lot of his stuff's funny. I think, Halloween is kind of funny. There's a lot of humor in this stuff. So
this was all shot in downtown LA, and those you'll notice the homeless people, they were actually Roddy Piper and John Carpenter actually got together and said, let's give, because there were a ton of people obviously there that were homeless, and he said, let's hook these people up, and let's give them some work and some food, and so they employed homeless people just to get them some money and some food for those couple of days while they were shooting those scenes. I thought that was a really nice touch. It showed that Carpenter and Piper are men of the people, so to speak.
That's true, and this is kind of a movie of the people as well. We'll maybe get into that. I don't think this is an overtly political movie. I think people have tried to make it that occasionally. I actually read at one point that like white nationalists decided that this was they're like, no, this is really like a pro-white movie. And I'm like, wow, that's not what this movie's about. This movie is about, anti-consumerism, basically just like pro people,
Yeah. Some people even said, I think Carpenter said, it was sort of a shot against, Reagan and Reaganomics of the era that had become, just prior to that. But I've never heard that white nationalism. That's creepy.
I hadn't heard it either until I started researching behind the scenes for this commentary. And then they're like, yeah, as much as it's like it's pretty accepted as a anti-consumerist kind of a thing, but it was adopted by a group of white nationalists who were like, no, this movie shows that like we are. I'm not gonna dignify it with a whole lot of other conversations, but just to play off of what you were just saying about the whole Reaganomics thing, just in case anyone is bothered by that, Roddy Piper liked Reagan. And Roddy Piper in the press for this movie, he would not, like when people were talking about the themes of the movie, he would not talk about how it was kind of a satire or criticism of the Reaganomics culture because he liked Reagan. So here we have, there's duality. People and ideas and things rarely fit into these boxes that we try to put them in. And I just think it's interesting that he's the star of the movie, that he doesn't necessarily agree with the message of this movie.
People love to put things in boxes.
Absolutely.
Right? They got
now more than ever.
And
it's also interesting that this movie was so we'll have to get into the source material for this movie at some point, because it's not an original John Carpenter story. He's adapting a 1963 short story, which is really good. But like, it's just variations on a theme that we've been dealing with for like the past 50 years. Because in the 60s, it was a criticism against television culture, like brainwashing and buy. And then in the 80s, of course, Carpenter uses that same theme. It's more relevant now than maybe it ever has been. Like the things that this movie is criticizing are so popular still. It blows my mind. We never really seem to put some of this stuff away. It's a perennial.
This is a theme in a movie. If ever there was something that you could build upon or do a sequel or, visit this universe again in our day and age, this would be the property. I would love to go after something like this. I know there were talks. I don't know how far they got, of course, because it doesn't seem like Carpenter can, Hollywood just, unfortunately, once a director reaches a certain age, unless you're, one of the handful, they just won't touch you. But I think there were talks for a little bit of them doing some type of sequel. I don't want to say reboot, but there was something going on there for a little bit. And I don't know if that would have involved Piper, but man, this could certainly work in 2019, 2020,
Absolutely. Yeah. I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So a couple of years ago so Disney owns everything now, and they were doing, it was a Force Friday. We now have a holiday. It's a legitimate holiday where you go buy Star Wars merchandise. They call it Force Friday. And it's like, I know people that take off of work to go buy things on Force Friday. And so on Force Friday a couple of years ago, I put up a thing on I can't remember if I did it from Serial at Midnight's account or my personal account, but it was It was a picture of like Roddy Piper with the glasses down, and it said like buy, and it was a picture of Star Wars merchandise, and I was like, if that doesn't sum up the culture that we're living in, where it's like buy Star Wars, and it went over like a lead balloon. I think it really upset people because they want to buy Star Wars stuff, which I understand, but you're right, like this is it's worse than it's ever been. This is totally relevant. Do you think maybe that part of the reason that we haven't seen something like this is because it's so anti commercialism, anti-consumerism, all that stuff, that it's not a good message for any studio to get behind? It would have to be done independently.
That's for sure. Yeah.
And independence. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the only other major studio release off the top of my head that addressed some of the similar themes would be Fight Club, and that was in '99. I mean, that would make a great double feature. They Live and Fight Club. A lot of duality going on there.
I just shot a Patreon collection tour, the movie collection tour, and I did briefly touch upon Fight Club when it came up. This is not the Fight Club commentary. I find a lot of I think there's a lot of complexity in the Fight Club thing. I don't necessarily think that Fight Club is a pro. I don't necessarily think it's endorsing the stuff that the movie's about. I think it's more about a commentary on society, and you're kind of verifying that. But I feel like a lot of people are just like, yeah, Fight Club is like a manifesto for how we're supposed to be living. And I'm like, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, no.
like Edward Norton's my hero, man. I'm like, I don't think that's the message of that movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so anyway, you are Mr. Roddy Piper. Like, you have the tattoos all over your body.
That's right. No, let's clear the air. No tattoos.
No, but you do absolutely love Roddy Piper, and you've had experience with him. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your affection for Roddy Piper?
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. I think about it, and every time I come back to it, so just so people know, my daughter is actually named Piper. I'm going to throw that out there. Mm-hmm. She was named, of course, I wasn't going to name her Roddy, but I did name her Piper. As a child of the 80s, I was in love with WWF, wrestling. Like, I got into it early. Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, mm-hmm. Paul Orndorff. Of course, Piper was sort of the Joker to Hogan's Batman. I mean, Hogan, Captain America, right? But
yeah,
the point is,
except for that weird period when he was like messing around with the enemies of the country, and he's like, I feel like there was a period where he kind of abandoned America, but
yeah, he left the Shield behind.
I don't know why he did that. He became nomad.
Right. So, I loved wrestling, and especially there's something about that time, right, where it was almost like Santa Claus. Like you knew there was something maybe not quite on the up and up, but there was still magic there, right? It wasn't like hitting you in the face. It wasn't like, oh, guys, we're putting on sports entertainment. This mm-hmm. is right. Yeah. Right. And so this is going off on another sort of a tangent, but it's directly related to this. So whenever Roddy Piper would be on the screen, my mom would always say, hey, when Roddy Piper comes out to wrestle, call me back into the room. I never understood why. I just thought, oh, she really hates this guy and wants to see him get his comeuppance. And later on, I was like, Mom, what's, and she told me, she's like, oh, he's really handsome. So my mom asked,
your mom had a crush on Roddy Piper.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just like the kilt.
Yeah. Right. So years later, I had the opportunity to go to a cancer benefit, and Roddy Piper was there to raise money. And it was in Niagara Falls. And I went there, and they were filming a music video, actually, now that I think of it. And I want to say it's on YouTube. And Roddy Piper was there actually to film this music video. Like he was with a real band, and it's a long-winded way of me saying that I ended up meeting him that night. Mm-hmm. And I'm very rarely, if ever, starstruck. I could probably count on 3 or 4 fingers the time, and I've been around through when I used to write for the Kevin Smith website or, various other things. I've been around celebrities, big, anyone from Stan Lee to Keanu Reeves to Natalie Portman, things like that. And, I appreciate them for what they are, but, I remember one time Ray Bradbury, came by me and it felt like the Pope was coming by me. I don't know. There was something about Ray Bradbury. I swear to you, I was like, I just reach out and touch him. And it was like, yeah, it was really strange. And then the other time was Roddy Piper, and we were escorted to this back room because somehow we got this VIP treatment, and he had done his performance. And I actually brought my mother with me because I thought she'd get a kick out of meeting him. And I went to shake his hand, and the next thing I know, I'm literally, I don't want to say lunging because that was a little too strong, but I was going forward uncontrollably to hug the man. Like, I just felt my entire childhood come rushing back over in this giant wave, and I was being swept under, and like I was being pulled towards the man. And to his credit, like he didn't see me as some nut job.
He leaned in for the kiss.
Yeah, you've seen the pictures.
Yes, I have.
But he leaned in, and it was like, I just totally felt like it was like seeing Santa Claus. And it was like, wow, all these years later, I knew Santa Claus was real, and people were telling me he was not real. Mm. And here he is in front of my eyes. Wow. And it was a very, looking back, it was very sweet of him to do.
Yeah.
And so it brought back so many memories of my childhood, and how fortunate and blessed I was to have, these parents that really provided me with everything I could possibly want and then some. And he was a part of that childhood and so many things that came with it, being in the 80s, Mm-hmm. And he was just such a great person. He just took so much time, and he spoke with my mother because I said my mom has a crush on you. I kind of whispered it to him, and he started talking to my mom about his son, and he was such a sweet man. This was about 2 years before he passed, and in that interim period, I had a daughter, and there was sort of a bet, like an over and under of like, what's he going to name his, is he going to name it after a comic book character? Is he going to name the child after a pro wrestler? And it was a pro wrestler. And I was like, I want to name my daughter Piper because it just represents everything. Mm-hmm. I want her to have the childhood basically that I had. And I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but other than that, he was one of the greatest guys that I met. He was real. He was so real and authentic. I think what you saw on screen, what you saw in the ring, the promos, it may have been a performance that was turned up just a little bit, but it's who he was. It's how we talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, he is not Steve Austin, but Steve Austin is an extension of who Steve Williams is. That's who he is. He's just dialed it up just a little bit. And so Roddy Piper was authentic. And you sent me something when we were preparing for this. You sent me a YouTube video of one of his behind the scenes, his kayfabe commentaries, and he can't even say like when someone was putting him over, which is like the wrestling term for like, doing a job for him to make him look good. Like, he couldn't even say it because it's just so ingrained in him that he's just genuine. So genuine. And when I was preparing for this also, I'm like, what is my appeal to him? Like, what because there's so many great talents and wrestlers and from that era, but I was like, what is it about him? And like when he passed, like, it really hit me. Like, we've lost some greats for, over the past couple of years, everyone from Stan Lee to Roddy Piper, of course. And they've all hit us in different ways. And I was trying to like, what is it about this one particular wrestler that really hit me? And I was like, it's almost like he was part of the Wild West. It was like
Yes.
Jesse James, or, you know, and it was like but during our time, like, we got to see one of these outlaws, you know, and it was like, I don't think we'll ever have, you know, it was a different era. It was almost like a combination of vaudeville and, you know, carnival, and that period of pro wrestling and pop culture, for that matter. I don't think we'll ever have that again. You know, the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak. You know, you can never get the toothpaste back into the bottle once that toothpaste is out, you know, and I think that's where we are now. And it's a shame. I think it was inevitable, of course, with the internet and things like that. But to Roddy Piper's credit, he never really truly wanted. I asked him, I said, would you put the sleeper hold on me? And he told me, turn around. And no one knew what he was going to do, because, you know, we had this bit of a conversation going on. It was a very noisy room when I met him. Mm-hmm. And I said, would you mind putting the sleeper hold on me? And he had this devilish grin on his face, like, man, you don't know what you just asked for. And he told me to turn around, and no one in my party knew what was going on, because they couldn't overhear it. And he kneed me in the spine. And it wasn't super hard, but he hit me right in the sweet spot, and my legs literally gave out from under me. And he put the sleeper hold on me, and it wasn't, you know, obviously he wasn't really putting it on, but he did it enough just to show me, hey kid, I can take you out if I want to, you know? And it was just it's like, this guy really, he's going to protect his art, his business, you know? And he even said, during that interview, which I recommend to everybody, it's called Timeline History of the WWE 1984. And it was put out by a company called Kayfabe Commentaries. And it was, I think, his last interview that he gave prior to his death. Mm. And he did not want to talk about things like, you know, blading, which for those of you who don't know, it's when a wrestler causes themselves to bleed in a match. And you know, he was very careful with how he talked about certain things. And he said, you know, wrestling is one of the greatest art forms, because there's so much psychology involved, you know. And he said maybe in years, maybe down the road, people will appreciate it for what it was. But kind of getting off on a major tangent, so I apologize to people, but I just wanted to explain why he was and is special to me.
Yeah. And it's important, because that's, you know, for those of us who lived during this time, and who lived during wrestling during this time, you know, he had gone, but Vince McMahon did not want him to make this movie.
Right.
Vince McMahon doesn't want to he doesn't want his people to do anything that wasn't his idea. So he did not want Roddy Piper to leave the WWF at the time to go make this movie. But Piper knew that he would be a bigger star when he came back, and it was all part of this plan, and he knew what he was doing. And so he was, I don't even know. Like, these were heroes. Like, I understand that it was, you know, wrestling is predetermined and all that stuff. But those of us who lived through this time have such an affection for these guys that we grew up with, or that, you know, we grew up watching, because of who they were, because they were it was the Titans. It was the Clash of the Titans. And we'd watch these storylines play out, and there's nothing remotely comparable to it right now. It doesn't mean that I don't still like wrestling or anything like that, but what we grew up with in the 80s, even in the 70s, it kind of started, but by the time the 80s came around, it was so just huge and gigantic. And these people, Roddy Piper, one of the best as far as his skills, his microphone skills, you know, his talking skills, his ability to just be who he was. He could turn the audience on a dime. You know, the Blu-ray for The Wrestler, the movie, the Mickey Rourke starring movie, The Wrestler, they have like a small round table discussion. Yep. He's one of the people on the discussion.
Yeah.
And it's just so clear how he understands the psychology. He understands the duality of, like, you're in the ring and there's thousands and thousands of people cheering for you and maybe millions watching at home, and then you leave and you go back to an empty hotel room. And all of that kind of comes through in Piper and in what he does. There's a darkness to him, but there's also, I mean, he had the great one-liners. I have come to chew bubblegum. But I was going to say that. We've come to chew bubblegum and record a commentary, and we're all out of bubblegum. I forgot to do that because I got distracted. But just pretend I said it. Everybody just pretend that was it.
So I'm glad you brought that up, though, because getting back to Piper, you know, he was that character, you know, as you said, turning the volume up to 11, like with Steve Austin. He created that himself. This wasn't like a bunch of writers that got together and then they picked somebody out of casting and said, okay, this guy's going to fit the part.
Right.
Roddy Piper created Roddy Piper. I mean, that line, that iconic, bubblegum line, that came from his notebook of, different one-liners that he would write for material that he would use during interviews to promote, upcoming matches and feuds and whatnot. And from what I understand, John Carpenter saw the book and they kind of both said, that's a good one. Why don't you use that for the bank scene? Which is what happened. That was not in the script. That was Roddy's own material.
And I think that's why we resonate with it. That's who he was. I mean, it's not like he was portraying a character when he was off screen. He was like, hey guys, like he was who he was all the time. It really seems like he was just an authentic, genuine guy. And I think that's why we like him so much. Wish we'd had more, I wish his career had kind of taken a different path and he'd been even more successful than he was. I think by wrestling standards, he was a success, but he was very talented. We're not talking a lot about what's happening on screen, but there's not a lot's going on right now. This is kind of the discovery phase, and they're laying a lot of groundwork. We also haven't mentioned Keith David, I think this is his second Carpenter movie. He'd been in The Thing with Kurt Russell, and he is he's our co-lead for this movie as well. So, that's kind of cool. I like how John Carpenter has a stable of actors. If he likes working with somebody, he always tries to find a way to bring them back for something else. And we're seeing that here. But this is really just kind of laying the groundwork that there's something going on. There's some cover-up going on in this building. There's something happening. There's a truth that seems like it's trying to be suppressed, and he wants to know what it is. And all of this... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, getting back to The Thing, according to Roddy Piper, at least, he picked out the design for the sunglasses with Kurt Russell, the two of them together. Now, I don't know if that's Roddy Piper being Roddy Piper and going into worker mode or remembering things differently, but I believe it was on the commentary for this DVD that I listened to. He mentions hanging with Kurt Russell, which, is it possible? Sure.
Yeah.
But
it seems a little dubious. It does.
Yeah, you got to remember too, somebody like Roddy Piper, after spending years in the business and really probably getting many concussions, and just being older, their memory wasn't quite what it may have been. And being a pro wrestler, a lot of times these guys would go into worker mode or carny mode, or for those of you that aren't into wrestling, how would you describe it, Heath? Like just making embellishments? You're just in
character all the time. You're not being candid. You're telling a story. You're continuing to tell the story.
And I think there were times later on in Piper's life where he may have been conflicted, or he was just constantly in that storyline mode where I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just saying, to this day, you can't believe a word that comes out of Hulk Hogan's mouth. Like there are things that I thought he was being legitimately honest about, and then you find out later, like, oh no,
he's notorious of all the guys. From what I understand too, from behind the scenes things I've heard, he's notorious of not being able to.
He's always working.
He'd rather climb a tree and tell a lie than stand on the ground and tell the truth,
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't trust the word that comes out of his mouth. And they'd be like, well, that makes Hogan a liar. But he doesn't see it as lying. He's just working. He's perpetuating that
for the
story.
Business.
Yeah, the stories of the business. And that's what Piper would do too. But I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. He swears that he saw Piper swears that he saw I think this is on the commentary too, but like he had seen, there was like a TV set in the 50s that they found out was transmitting subliminal messages. And it was actually like a sketch, like it was a comedy satire kind of a thing. And he thought it was real. But again, like, did he, or was that just the narrative that he was running with? It's we will never know.
Well, and so there was a phase, and this may have unfortunately led to his premature. No, I don't say premature, but he wasn't very old when he died. You know,
it was premature for sure.
He was known as being a heavy partier.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there are quite a few stories, where this guy was just, you know, like I said, the Wild West. Like, this guy was guns blazing all the time, 24/7. You know, you hear these stories about Ric Flair being, you know, the nature boy, being the party man. Well, these guys were neck and neck with each other. You know, they were, and for Piper, he had a very difficult, childhood, if he had any childhood whatsoever. He was born in Canada. Mm-hmm. He didn't live there for long, though. He did apparently go over to Scotland, but I don't know the full deal. I know he wasn't like an orphan per se, but from what I gathered, he was pretty much kind of living on the streets, more or less.
Yeah, I think he was kind of just put out on his own.
Right.
One of those situations. Tough childhood.
And he fell into wrestling as a way to make a dime.
To survive, yeah.
To survive.
It was his way out.
He said he wasn't one of these guys that grew up watching wrestling saying like, oh, you know, I loved, you know, Hulk Hogan. I want to be the next Hulk Hogan, or I want to be the next Shawn Michaels. He said, I got into it to make money because I needed to survive, which is interesting, you know, because we are talking about him today.
Yeah. And then he has a great autobiography too. It's written, you know, it's one of those autobiographies written by Roddy Piper and then, you know, like basically he just talked to somebody and they put it together. But it is all the stories of those early days growing up, you know, born in Canada.
There's a more recent one actually that came out that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was co-authored by his two of his children, Colt and Ariel. And apparently he had made the deal, and then they were gathering all the material, and then he passed away. So his two of his children completed the book, and it's mostly a compilation of interviews, and you know, I don't think any of it directly is maybe anything new that we haven't heard, but it's a nice book if anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah, Dave, you were telling me, which I've seen it, but I haven't bought it yet. There's also a new WWE DVD collecting some of his unseen matches, basically dark matches. Is that what you'd say? I mean, you have it, right? Is it dark matches?
Yeah, it's mostly dark matches, things that weren't collected anywhere else. But if anybody's listening, and you know, it's hard not to keep bringing this back to pro wrestling, but
sure.
If you can get onto YouTube, you really want to check out any of his early work in Portland for Don Owens. That's like prime Piper, like right before he came over to WWF at the time. Really a young guy that's just that was his prime, you know, and then like 84 WWF. But if you go onto YouTube, because this Portland material will never get released, and just kind of navigate for yourself, you know, Google or go onto YouTube and look under Roddy Piper, Portland wrestling, and you're going to find some really, really cutting edge stuff for that time. You know, I can't remember, it may have been Portland where he did an interview where he broke a bottle over his head. And it was legit, like it was not a a prop or a gimmicked bottle. And he just, you know, he's doing this in front of a camera, and you know, there's a studio audience of maybe 30 people, I don't know, you know, and that's how they used to do these. It wasn't like today where they're at these big arenas filming, you know, Monday Night Raw. It was just this television, and bang, he busts this bottle open, and he's got blood coming down, and he's trying to put butts in seats, as they say. He was trying to draw a crowd to the next event.
Tough as nails. And there's the dog collar match.
Yes.
The famous, that's one of my favorite Piper matches, is the dog collar match. So Greg Valentine, is that who that was with, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They basically beat the crap out of each other with chains, and he gets his eardrum busted in the match.
So John Carpenter is a huge wrestling fan.
Yes.
And he actually he wrote, I don't know how many articles, but for the wrestling magazines back in the day, he wrote some articles. And the way he got introduced to Piper, apparently he had seen an outtake of Hell Comes to Frogtown, which was, I believe that was Piper's second movie.
And it's just out on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome.
And And
Obey.
prior to, and by the way, that's a matte, right? All those scenes right there with those are all matte shots.
I miss matte paintings.
Yeah, we talked about during the Batman commentary.
Yeah, we did. That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were talking about Carpenter.
He wanted somebody that would be the everyman for this role. And, you know, he loved Piper's look, you know, his face, he's got these scars and, you know, even blemishes and, but also somebody very tough. Like looking at Roddy Piper, I could see him in an old John Wayne Western,
Absolutely.
Maybe not with the mullet action going on there, but, so he had, arranged for a dinner with Roddy Piper prior to WrestleMania 3. And the story is it was Dave Wolf, who was Cyndi Lauper's manager and husband, that also sort of arranged it. And of course, Cyndi Lauper had that rock and wrestling connection earlier on MTV with Piper and Hulk Hogan and Captain Lou Albano. And they had a long dinner, Roddy Piper and John Carpenter, and they barely discussed movies. And at the end of the dinner, he basically said, you know, I'm making this movie. Do you want to be in it? And, you know, that's how the story goes, at least. But it's very clear Carpenter is a huge wrestling fan, or at least was. And from what I heard in the way he was talking, I could tell he wasn't just some casual fan. He was a diehard fan. I think he would have gotten along with us, you know, if we had Carpenter here right now. I think he might want to talk wrestling more than horror movies, you know?
Yeah, I would love to talk to Carpenter one day, and not about Carpenter's movies, but just about other things. That's the thing that you do. Like, one of the things that, here's a podcast plug, is the movies that made, is it Movies That Made Us or The Movies That Made Me? I can't remember, but the one that Joe Dante co-hosts. And the gimmick of that podcast is that what'd you say?
With his co-host, Josh
Olson, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They don't talk to the guests about, they're all celebrity, you know, Hollywood guests. They don't talk to them about the movies that they've been involved with. They talk to them about the movies that they enjoy and that were formative for them. And that's really you're in for conversations with people like this. It's just get them talking about the things that they're passionate about. Because you're usually not, you make your work, you know, you do your work, but you want to connect to somebody's passion. You talk about the stuff that influenced them. And I would love to talk to Carpenter about like Westerns and wrestling and all that.
I always wanted Carpenter's thing. Apparently, you know, he loved Westerns and he always wanted to make a Western.
Mm-hmm. Which he has arguably several times.
Yes. But, you know, now Carpenter, he's been sort of relegated to, at best, the convention circuit.
Yeah.
Which apparently I've heard that he basically just chain smokes cigarettes and plays video games. Mm-hmm. And I guess he's a big video game guy. And
that's something else he and I could talk about.
Right. And I guess if you go up to his, you know, table or whatever, he'll just take a quick second, you know, puff off the cigarette, put down the controller and sign the autograph or whatever. And then he'll go back to his games or whatever. But, you know, it just shows you how flawed Hollywood is when we have one of a truly great talent like John Carpenter, who could make anything from Starman to They Live to The Thing. And we're not letting this guy make movies now. Why?
Yeah.
He's quote unquote too old. He's out of touch. What's the deal? Same with, you know, you mentioned Joe Dante. Why are we not seeing movies? Joe Dante, you know,
Dante talks about how he has projects that he tries to make, but you can't get financing for it. And it's like, they're not who the studios want to, they can't get the money to make the movies. You know, they're not going to put up millions of dollars of their own money for things like that. That's not how movies work. You get financing from different sources, but yeah, no, it's totally.
I can appreciate it, but I mean, you look at somebody like Quentin Tarantino, and there's many people that will go to a film just because they know this is a Quentin Tarantino film.
Right. Yeah.
Right. They don't know anything else about it. I feel the same way about John Carpenter and Joe Dante, and now more than ever. I mean, look at Carpenter with this. You know, Halloween reboot from Blumhouse. You know, it's like, man, can't we just have I mean, he probably doesn't even want to direct another Halloween, but it's like, you guys made so much money off of Halloween. I'm speaking of Blumhouse. It's like, just give the guy $20 million. I mean, it's probably chump change for them. Give him $20 million. Let him go film something for, anything.
And his involvement, I don't know if you've seen that new Halloween movie, but his involvement absolutely makes a difference.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell that the master is back.
Yes. And, I've heard all the, everything there's about all the criticism about the Rob Zombie movies. Mm-hmm. And I think they're all fair and they're all valid points. To his defense, there was so much meddling going on with the zombie movies. Where the Weinsteins were basically just telling, like, every day they would call him and change this, and he just basically threw his hands up, and it became just a payday, more or less. So
he tells those stories on the Joe Rogan podcast that he.
Yes, he did. That's it.
People can hear that if they want to.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a shame, but things like that do. But the movie was basically sold as Rob Zombie's Halloween. So if anyone's going to take brunt of the criticism, of course, it's going to be Rob Zombie, which is a shame. But
to only like, okay. The only thing I'll say to that is that a lot of the criticisms that are leveled at those movies, I see the same things popping up in every other Rob Zombie movie.
True.
So I do think that there was a lot of meddling, but I don't know. I just wanted to balance that with, some of that, may just be zombies.
It's all valid. Yeah, I agree with. I mean, I didn't like those movies, but
yeah,
it is what it is. It's crazy they made two of them. It's like after the first one, it's like, wow, they went back a second time,
Because it's all about that bottom line. They made enough money to justify a sequel, which is what it's crazy that, like, if John Carpenter. If they handed John Carpenter $5 million, he could make something amazing. I don't know if he wants to. Do we know if John Carpenter wants to make movies anymore? I hear so many of these guys, these 80s, 70s and 80s directors talking about how the system has just changed so much now. They just don't enjoy it anymore. They don't like the CGI. That's one of the things that we need to talk about. This is all done in a pre-CGI world. We're talking about basically costumes and puppets and matte paintings. And it's very effective.
I think it was a $4 million budget.
Yes. Yeah, I read that. $4 million, which seems crazy considering how we're basically talking about, like, aliens living among us with big action scenes and big ideas, and they made it for $4 million and a star, and they made it for $4 million.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the weird part about this was they would not promote this film during WWF programming, because at the time Piper had left, right? And there was some concern that, like, oh, he's going to eclipse Hulk Hogan as a star. Mm-hmm. Whether true or not, that's up for debate. But I do remember watching at the time WCW, and they had this weird promo segment where it was like, here's, an upcoming clip of Roddy Piper. And I'm like, why is Roddy Piper showing up on WCW? Because in my head, I had only known him as a WWF guy, as a kid back then.
Here comes your line.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to pause out of respect. It's a hero shot right there, too. You need a poster of that, just him with the sunglasses and the shotgun. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
So those the alien design was done by Sandy Carpenter, John Carpenter's now wife. The that kind of skeleton alien looking face. Mm-hmm. Apparently that was her design.
And in the novel, it's not a novel, it's like a 5-page story. But in the book, in the source material, they're like lizard people. So I like this better. And this is probably because you could not do lizard people in a movie. There's no way to do a convincing lizard person costume that probably wouldn't look like the Gorn from Star Trek. I know you're not a huge Star Trek fan, but like the lizard man from the original 60s series of Star Trek, this just so rubber suit, so Halloween costumey. It's charming, but this is more effective. This is kind of gross. It's skeletal. There's like tissue and stuff. It just looks like the faces have been ripped off.
Yeah.
And this is a violent movie, but as they would point out, no really, I think like 1 or 2 humans die. Like all the violence is against these alien invaders, these alien captors, which I guess is supposed to make it better. I don't know.
I never even thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's like the old G.I. Joe cartoons where it would be like the what were the name of the robot troopers? The
Viper. Was it the Cobra Viper? No. Dang it, Josh.
Was it like Bat?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes. B period A. Yeah. Like
right.
Yes.
How those would always get mowed down, but like you'd never see anybody really.
Yeah. See a plane go down, then be like a parachute.
Yeah.
So here's Meg Foster, like halfway into the movie. Those piercing eyes of Meg Foster. The eyes of Meg Foster.
Right. Meow.
It's like blue steel. One of the things about I want to talk about the source material for a little bit because it's based on so the story it originally appeared in a sci-fi fantasy magazine in 1963, November of 1963. I don't remember what the name of the magazine was. May have been just like fantasy and sci-fi, but it's like 5 pages long, and it's called 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's written by Ray Nelson. And I have it. My voice is hoarse. I'm sorry. I have it in a collection called Reel Future, REEL Future. And I was looking at this. I bought this from the Sci-Fi Book Club in the 90s. It has a copyright from 1994. And I was looking in the copyright page.
Shout out to the Sci-Fi Book Club.
Yes. Is it even around anymore?
I don't know, but it should be if it's not.
With everything digital now, I don't even know if it's around anymore. But yeah, so many, like Sci-Fi Book Club was a resource for so many of us to get this good stuff.
We should start our own Serial at Midnight Book Club.
Okay, it'll be better than the Oprah Book Club. But check this out. So it's copyright 1994 by Forrest J. Ackerman and Gene Stein. And then it looks like this was a Barnes and Noble edition that maybe Sci-Fi Book Club got their hands on somehow. I'm not sure. But anyway, so it's 1994. And the book itself is a collection of 16 short stories that would be adapted for feature films. So, like The Incredible Shrinking Man, I think is in here. This Island Earth, the original short story for This Island Earth. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, Philip K. Dick. That would go on to be Total Recall. That was Philip K. Dick, right? Now I'm doubting myself.
Yes. No, you're correct.
Somebody's going to be like, actually, that was... and it's got this story in there. And the source material called 8 o'clock in the morning. And it is so short. But everything in this movie comes directly from... I mean, not everything, but almost everything comes from those 5 pages. It's like 8 paragraphs, but it's all of it. But in the short story... we enter the story. This guy has been awoken by he's been snapped back into consciousness from a hypnotist. Like it's one of those hypnotist shows, and he's been snapped back in. And when he comes back to his awareness, he can see that there are people in the audience that aren't people. He calls them what does he call them? Hold on. Why do I do this to myself? Fascinators. They're called fascinators, and they're like lizard people. And it is the same thing. It's like he just decides that he's going to start killing them. He realizes, like, he sees the signs that say obey and work 8 hours, sleep 8 hours, play 8 hours, like have babies, procreate, buy. And it's this commentary on how culture is just like ramming, Colgate toothpaste down our throats or, Monsanto products. And he just starts killing them. And is kind of like we're on the side of Roddy Piper in this movie because he's kind of like he's not a victim, but he's aware, like he's awakened.
Were you going to say he's woke?
He's woke.
I was trying to avoid that. Sorry.
He's hashtag woke. But in the story, it's kind of dubious as if this guy's just crazy or not. I mean, that's my read of it, is it's not black and white spelled out. Like, is this guy really seeing aliens? I mean, he thinks he's seeing aliens, but he's just going around killing people. It's like, as I kill them, I could see that his face looked like my neighbor, and then it turned back into the monster. It's kind of vague. Like, is he just having a breakdown and killing his community? But I mean, it does kind of have a hard ending where it seems like maybe the rest of the world is going to be hashtag woke as well. But it's just so interesting to me that out of this 5-page story, we have a 94-minute movie that does the same thing on a bigger scale.
With a 30-minute fight sequence, though.
30 minutes. Yeah. We haven't missed that, right? Like, that hasn't happened yet, has it?
No.
I didn't think it had. We'll have to talk. Save it for the fight scene.
Plenty to say about that.
I feel like Meg Foster can see through people. Like, she has X-ray eyes.
Yeah, there's
an old movie called The Man with the X-ray Eyes.
Right.
She's the woman with X-ray eyes. All right, so the criticisms that can be leveled at this movie is like, well, it's just kind of anti-capitalist and anti-free market and stuff like that. I don't really think those hold water, because these criticisms go back far earlier. I mean, maybe you can, because, hey, maybe it's all pro-communist propaganda. I don't think it is, but I guess you can kind of bring what you want to this movie.
I wonder what Carpenter saw in this. I mean, he strikes me as somebody that was maybe a hippie or part of that generation.
I think more than a hippie, he's just anti-authoritarian.
Yes. Okay.
Which I strongly relate to.
Yes. And I wonder, though.
Piper as well.
Yes. Very good point. It's just interesting that he chose that point in his career to make this film. I wonder, what the gestation period was, if this had been something that he had been wanting to make, for a decade or so, or if it was something that just, oh yeah, this will be a good next project, and the stars sort of aligned. Or I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
That is really interesting, because he would have been at kind of the peak of his powers at this point, wouldn't he?
Right. Yeah.
I haven't thought about that. Yeah, because this, after Halloween, after The Fog, after Escape from New York, after Big Trouble in Little China, which was one of his more mainstream movies. Mm-hmm. And then here comes this, which is basically tearing it all down and just saying, like, the machine is broken. The machine is undermining us, and it's taking away. Very interesting. It's kind of like how Spielberg and George Lucas were going through a divorce during the time of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So there's all this, like, anger at women.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting. That's a good shot of Los Angeles right there.
It's great. There's a nice duality there going on as well. Sort of Piper in the dirt, and then you got that big city.
Look at you. Yeah, man. Bringing the symbolism. Metaphor.
This is true. This is John Carpenter's street, where he lives.
Oh, so he's probably inside one of these buildings playing Nintendo.
Yeah, at least at the time. I don't know if he still lives there, but
yeah, probably not. I saw an interview with him in a one of these boutique Blu-rays. I can't remember which one, but they were talking to Carpenter about something, probably Westerns, and he was in his, like, media room, like his book room, and it looked like one of ours, man. Like, just like we expect, like Rob Zombie has the movie Vault. I think he did. We saw it on Cribs, like MTV Cribs. This is the Cribs of Rob Zombie. And he had this huge vault of movies, and it's like a library with these rolling shelves and things like that. But like John Carpenter's shelves just look like ours. It was just like stuff stacked on stuff stacked on stuff.
He's just a pack rat like the rest of us.
Exactly. There's just like toys here and like the occasional little tchotchke. We're all here in the dirt together. What's the old quote? Oscar Wilde, maybe. So we're all We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Carpenter was looking at the stars. That's a fascinating point, though, about this movie coming at the point in it. What did he make after this? I'm going to have to pull up IMDb just to look at his resume because I don't have it memorized.
Right. I mean, you would think
Prince of Darkness would have been after this, I think.
Could have been. Yeah, I think you're right.
Or maybe, I'm thinking maybe was Prince of Darkness 87?
Oh, we need to look before I stick.
I'm checking.
Yeah.
Checking. Okay. Yeah, Prince of Darkness was 87. So
this was Prince of Darkness and then They Live.
Prince of Darkness in 87. I'll just do a quick rundown. You can see the hits. Dark Star in 74, Assault on Precinct 13 in 76, Halloween in 78, the TV movie Someone's Watching Me in 78, the Elvis miniseries, which if people haven't seen the Elvis miniseries that he did with Kurt Russell,
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great. The Fog in 80, Escape from New York in 81, The Thing in 82, Christine in 83, Starman in 84, Big Trouble in Little China 86, Prince of Darkness 87, They Live in 88, and then he took 4 years off, and his next movie was Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase. Then Body Bags, TV movie Body Bags 93, In the Mouth of Madness in 94, Village of the Damned in 95, Escape from LA in 96, Vampires in 98, Ghosts of Mars in 2001. And that was it for most of the decade until The Ward in 2010. So this does seem to be kind of a dividing line in his career, if you ask me. Like, it's the pinnacle of his classic period.
Yeah, you can just hear those hits. It's like a greatest hits when you were reading off that first half, and then the second half it gets a little more into the deep cuts, and
which now makes me wonder if he was just deliberately working against himself. Like if he was, I've done that. I'm not going to repeat that. I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to make movies that are not what's expected, that aren't. I mean, he would have been more in the Hollywood system than ever before at that point too.
Well, Ghost of Mars, a lot of people say that's one of his westerns. You know, if you're gonna.
Yes. Oh, it's 100% a western.
Yeah.
100%. I did a review for that. I'm trying to remember if I wrote it or if I just talked about it. I think I just talked about it. Yeah, it's on Blu-ray again. It was out of print for a hot minute. Now it's on Blu-ray again from Mill Creek, and revisiting it, it's weird. Oh, here we go. I say it's weird. It's not. It's just. It feels like. I think he was just bored. That's what I think it is. I think he was just bored. I think he was tired. In the special features for some of the stuff, I've heard him just say he was tired of. He was just tired of that. He was tired of doing that thing, which I can understand.
Yeah, he did an episode of Masters of Horror, which is worth checking out if you haven't seen it. So they practiced this fight scene, depending on who you listen to, anywhere from 6 weeks to 2 months.
Yeah, I read 3, I read 6, and then I read months. So,
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe one of those was Piper working the business. He said, we practiced that fight for 8 months. But it's a real fight. It's basically a shoot fight, as we would say, without face punches and crotch shots. Like they're really, really wrestling each other. It's really physical. I think considered by a lot of people to be one of the best movie fights ever.
Yeah, and it's definitely feels like something out of a John Wayne movie.
Yes. Scheduled for like 20 seconds of screen time, and it ends up being over 5 minutes. It's going to be hard to talk during this fight.
It reminds me of Piper's match he did. I think it was at a WrestleMania, the backlot brawl with Goldust.
Yeah, where he broke his fist.
That's actually great. If no one's seen that, I recommend checking that out because it's not a wrestling match, per se. It feels kind of like something taken out of this movie. And
Yeah, Dustin Rhodes tells that story too. He tells it like
the son of Dusty.
Yes, the son of Dusty Rhodes. He told it at the convention that I saw him at, where I was sitting on the front row. Someone was like, "Could you tell us about the backlot brawl with Roddy Piper?" He's like, "Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll make it short." And it was still like a 10-minute story. But it just kind of seems like Piper's crazy. Like when he starts working, he just keeps working. Like he takes it seriously. Broke his hand, man. Just broke. Like, did he intend to break his hand, or that just was in an accident? I don't know. They should market these glasses. They should have. I don't know if they did, but there should have been like They Live branded sunglasses.
Oh, totally. I'd buy
but
them.
Then that would have been feeding into the the consumer's theme.
I would have bought 2, one to open and one to wear.
One to keep in the box.
Mint.
It does make me wonder what was was there They Live merchandising, or was that I don't know.
I mean, if they had Rambo action figures, why couldn't they have They Live action figures, right?
Or like trading cards,
lunch boxes. There's a wrestling move there.
Could you imagine? Yeah, could you imagine showing up at like the lunch table when you're in junior high, like you're in 7th grade, and you show up with the They Live lunchbox? That'd have been amazing. I don't know. Maybe there was merchandise. It just seems kind of anti-message. Right. This movie, I can't imagine. Of course, it wouldn't have really been Carpenter's decision at the end of the day. This is a Universal movie, which again is really surprising that Universal's like, yeah, okay, a movie about consumerism from one of our biggest directors and starring one of wrestling's biggest stars, or anti, like a commentary against consumerism with these really talented people. Yeah, that's fine. It kind of just goes to show, like, these companies don't care what you're saying as long as it's making money.
Yeah, and probably, too, because it was at the height of John Carpenter's powers. They probably just said, let the guy do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah. It's just interesting how many YouTube videos there are that are anti-YouTube, and YouTube is Google. Like, they don't care. They're like, hey, as long as we can monetize it, you can say whatever you want to say.
Yeah, that's another good point too, is like, of course, social media didn't exist when this movie was made, and that would add a whole new level and a whole nother layer to this story if they made this movie now, talking about like Facebook and Google and things like that. Twitter.
It's ripe for me. You said it's ready. It's all right there.
I'm going to talk to an editor. I'm going to talk to an editor as soon as this is over and pitch them. Get a comic book series going on this.
I think you should. I think it's right there. This was originally released in Europe as Invasion Los Angeles, which I like maybe more than They Live, because They Live doesn't really tell us anything about the movie. I mean, I get like They Live, We Sleep, but Invasion Los Angeles just has this like classic 50s.
Right.
And it is a throwback story. Like, this does feel kind of like a 50s. I guess if it had been done in the 50s, it would have been a commentary against like McCarthyism and.
Which, shout out to my dad who carried the casket of McCarthy when he was a Marine.
There you go.
Little tidbit there for you, for anybody that is into their political history. But my father was a Marine, and he was actually one of the pallbearers assigned to McCarthy. That funeral. You never know where life takes you sometimes.
I know, man. It's
one day you're in your office typing a review, and then the next minute you're hanging out with Roddy Piper,
hugging him,
or his daughter for that matter, right?
You talk about that.
Yeah, so recently I've been doing some work for All Elite Wrestling. And I was in Chicago for their recent pay-per-view, and she was a part of it. It was her first ever match. She was in the sort of pre-show kickoff, and it was a women's battle royal. And Teal Piper is her wrestling name. And I was like, what are the odds that I'm going to be, I'm getting paid to cover this event. in Chicago, and Roddy Piper's daughter is making her pro wrestling debut. And I made a point to go up to her and introduce myself and tell her about the impact that her father had on me. And I showed her pictures of my daughter, and she thought it was great, just because, you know, she said, especially now that he's gone, that she really loved hearing these types of stories. But what was nice was I was definitely not the only story that she heard like that. It seemed to me like these stories were pretty common, that he really took his time with the fans. I think toward the end there, Heath, I don't know if because he had actually beaten cancer once. A lot of people don't realize that. That was part of the reason why he was at the cancer benefit that I attended. So he was a cancer survivor. And I don't know, there was sort of like a peace, I feel like, that had come over the man. Almost like he knew that he was maybe blessed in a way, you know, that he had touched.
Maybe he was on borrowed time.
Yeah, I think he knew he was on borrowed time. And he maybe realized, like, I better enjoy this, because, like, you know, these people are coming up to me. And it wasn't just like, you know, what's your name, kid? You know, let me sign your autograph and then move on. It was like he was really taking these stories to heart. And I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe there was a realization that he could have been on borrowed time. Mm-hmm. But
maybe he just came to appreciate what he had there, you know, at the end.
It could be. I've heard stories from other wrestlers that told me, younger guys that said, you know, here we were trying to, like, sign autographs, you know, and just move on to the next one. And we saw Roddy Piper taking 10, 15 minutes with each fan, you know, and holding up the line. And they're like, if Roddy Piper can do that, you know, then who are we to, you know? Mm-hmm. And so maybe he was always that way with his fans. I don't know, but certainly when I met him, there was something about him that really spoke to me. Like he was listening. I got the impression that it was like, you know, you hear these stories about Tom Cruise where it's like he always makes eye contact with the person, and it's like they say, like, it's like, oh, he's listening. Like, it's very. I had the same thing with him, like, where he was making eye contact, and maybe he knew for him it was no big deal, you know, but for me it meant the world, and I think he was giving that to me. Mm-hmm. And the point is, you know, his daughter, she was very nice, very kind, as well. And she it'll be interesting to see if she has a career and where it goes from here, because that's a big shadow, big footsteps to follow in.
Yeah, that would be a double-edged sword, but she might be able to overcome it, because she certainly got the legacy. She's got a good shot. May I also tell that you told me that Chris Jericho had that same intensity, that when you met Chris Jericho, he locked into you, and it was just like every bit of his attention was focused on what you were saying. Like he was there with you. Yes. Yeah. I'd like to say, so if, you know, I am backstage for those AEW or All Elite Wrestling shows, the last couple at least. They've only run a few, right, at this point. But with that being said, you know, we get there very early at the arena, 10 a.m., and the show might not be until 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. And sorry to, you know, pull the curtain back a little bit, but a lot of these guys show up, you know, they're in their gym clothes, or, you know, they're not wearing contacts. They got regular glasses on or baseball caps or whatever. They're not, you know, in costume, so to speak. They're not in their gear. Jericho and also Cody Rhodes. But Jericho, when he came back, you know, and I've met him twice now backstage, and he's got the swagger, he's got the charisma. He knows, you know, hey, I'm a main eventer, you know, I'm a star. People are paying to see me. He's not a guy that, you know, comes in wearing, you know, flip flops and cut off shorts and whatever. This guy is dressed to the nines, looks like a rock star, you know, probably takes after like a Paul Stanley, you know, and which I know he loves Kiss. They're a huge influence on him. But even backstage, you know, he just talking with him briefly, makes that eye contact, and he's got that aura about him as well, where it's like, you know, if you saw that guy in an airport, you would say, okay, he's a rock star. Yeah. He's a pro wrestler. He's an actor. He's somebody. Who is he? I want to know, you know, if you didn't know who he was. And I should add, very gracious, very cool guy. He's a nice guy too. That's what makes
Very
it.
nice guy.
Some people are just stars. They're just born with charisma. They're born with something that other people don't have, and Piper was one of those guys.
That X factor. There's an X factor about certain people. And, it's weird because earlier I mentioned that I had met Stan Lee. Now, obviously, Stan Lee has had a huge, profound impact on my childhood, same as you. If anybody hasn't seen it, go watch the video that Heath did. It's such a, it's like your real-time reaction that you filmed when you had heard that Stan Lee had passed. And look, we all knew that day would come. I mean, Stan lived a great, long life. But I don't think any of us were like, oh, what is life going to be like without him?
Yeah.
And, you had filmed it, and I encourage everybody to go back and find that video. But, I had met Stan Lee, and I spoke with him. I want to say it was probably a 10-15 minute conversation. And his impact on me as a writer and, also just as a fan, huge, same, equal to Roddy Piper, if not more so. But when I met Stan Lee, maybe it was because of his age, he was sort of more like a grandpa, when I met him.
Right.
But it didn't have that same effect on me. Like I realized, wow, this is Stan Lee, and like, holy cow, like, Excelsior, now here I am talking to the man in person, but, he didn't have that X factor, as far as meeting him in person, that aura, which is hard to explain. I don't, maybe he would have that effect on different people, but, not like when I met Roddy, for example, or, somebody like a Chris Jericho, where you just, and some of that could be their physique, they're larger than life men. And,
could be, but it just, there are some people that just have this thing, and
look, I don't want anybody to bash me. I mean, Stan was very charismatic back in the day, especially in the 60s and the 70s when he'd visit college campuses, and, people would.
Yes. But Stan presented himself as your friend. He was like Uncle Stan. He was not going for, he was going for more of a friendly relative kind of a thing. He was not positioning. He never, now I think maybe behind the scenes, sometimes he was very much the controlling, larger than life personality, but he was never presented to us that way. And when he would engage with fans, that interaction was never what we're talking about here. It was more, family, more.
The interaction that I had with him, it was very, surreal, because of course you, me, everyone listening to this probably knows, just how, I mean, it's Stan Lee, right? I mean, we're talking Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, right? These are the guys. And when I talked to him, he was with an assistant. It was not one of these assistants at the end that, were, abusing him or, hiding him away from his real, friends and family at the end there, unfortunately. But, I thanked him for what he had done, for comics, and what he had done for me is, just like, I want to get into comics because of this guy and whatever. And the lady that was with him, his assistant, was like, see, Stan, they still appreciate you. Like he almost, it was like he didn't believe that people, that he was Stan Lee. It was like, it was this weird thing that he needed to be reassured of, and, like that he was still relevant somehow. And,
well, you've probably heard Kevin Smith. I mean, you've worked under Kevin Smith's banner for, how many years did you do Movie Poop Shoot?
Yeah.
He has stories about, I mean, even when Stan died, I think you sent it to me, the podcast that Kevin Smith put up about it after, and he would talk about how, like, there were two Stans. There was like the persona, and then there was the real guy, and the persona was this projection. It was something he had created so he could do these things. Persona opened the doors for him to do that.
Yeah, that's again, going back to like turning the volume up, like the Stan Lee that I met, if maybe the volume was at 2, and then he had to turn the volume up to 10 or 12, when he made these different appearances, or when he was trying to be the hype man or the pitch man, or maybe he just felt like the comics industry had passed him by, when I had met him, but we're getting way off topic here. Sorry.
No, so, well, we've been talking over the actual plot, I guess we've found out that
Spoilers.
Yeah. Spoilers for the movie you're watching. This is like just like a feeding planet for these aliens, that they're just like, we are the livestock, and they're just using us to we're livestock, and that this is just another in a list of planets that they'll use and devour. And I think that's a powerful metaphor for what the theme of the movie is, which is that we need to be awoken. #woke. We need to stand up for ourselves, realize that we are valuable and that we are giving up too much of ourselves. I really think that's what the movie's about. I think that's what the message that Carpenter is trying to hammer home.
And that same message was definitely cheap plug, but if you've read Bubba Hotep and the Cosmic Bloodsuckers, they use 3D glasses to sort of see the aliens, or the cosmic bloodsuckers, that are also feeding on. So an homage to They Live, if you will. But
did you bring that, or was that Joe's?
Oh no, that's all Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Joe's.
It's just interesting that this stuff is just kind of in the creative sphere. Ooh, that's a nice explosion. Look like it took everybody by surprise, too.
Mm-hmm.
But no, this sentiment has been around for a long time.
Right.
That's one of the things that, as you get further and further into the just like the more movies you watch, the more stories you consume, nothing is really new. It's all been done before. I mean, even it goes back to Mary Shelley. So many things just go all the way back to the beginning of what we consider like horror, like modern horror and things like that. A lot of these aren't new ideas. They just keep getting packaged over and over. So
right.
That's just one more testament to the fact that this idea is more relevant than it's ever been. And that it's, you got to talk to your editor at IDW, because this needs to be repackaged for the modern times. They want us to buy toys and action figures and check our likes on social media.
The algorithms, right? It's just, there's so much material there. It's just, yeah. But, you could argue too that, like these same themes are done, at different times. And, sometimes they resonate more deeply with one generation as opposed to a different generation, it's all about timing sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're ready for this right now. We seem to be. Listen, I'm not the most anti-consumerist person in the world. I have a huge movie collection. I love to buy things. I have my things that I buy, so I'm not necessarily speaking out against all of it, but I'm just saying, like, we really do seem to be in a phase right now where, like, with the Funko Pops and with all this stuff.
Right.
I don't know that we're ready for an anti-consumerist message right now. We seem to be really enjoying it.
Yeah.
Including me. So,
well, in defense of that though, I feel like a lot of the purchases I make I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I will a little bit.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's like we're buying the art, we're buying the experience of watching the movie, or like movies that weren't maybe available to us at a certain time.
That's true.
And it's like now they're being released on Blu-ray, whether it's Scream Factory or Vinegar Syndrome or Mill Creek or Kino or, whatever. Mm-hmm. We're not saying like, we got to get the slipcase and we got to get that, those things are all nice. But at the end of the day, we want the art. We want the experience of the movie, or, which is what you do at Serial at Midnight, it's sort of a community experience of everybody saying like, hey, this is what I dig and this is what I dig. And, let's kind of see if we can meet in the middle and share different ideas.
And I do talk a lot about how I try to not shine a spotlight on the purchases themselves. I try not to make look at what I bought videos and things like that. I try to have things to say about them, because it is about the art. That's what we do. You're right. It is about the art, and we're living in a golden age. I don't think it's going to last forever. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I don't think it can last too much longer, but this golden age where all of these companies are just putting out things that have been unavailable for years, and in some cases decades, things that have never had DVD releases or Blu-ray releases. We're getting these really great special editions of things. Like, for instance, the film noir archives that are coming out from, it's like a collaboration between Mill Creek Entertainment, Kit Parker Films, MVD is in there somehow. It's a few companies are working together, and between the 3 volumes that have been put out, there's like 27 film noir movies that have basically either not been represented on physical media ever, or were maybe like burned on demand. They'd burn a DVD for you if you asked for it years ago. And so this really is the time to preserve this stuff, because we have unprecedented access to it. And I don't think that access is going to last forever. Go ahead.
No, I agree 100%. I feel like a lot of these times it's like, it's now or never. Like, if I don't,
yes.
If you don't grab it now, when you might not get that chance again,
because the message of the movie we're watching is talking about like corporations and how they have control. And without sounding completely fruitcakey, I do think that we are witnessing the rise of more control for these corporations than they've had in the past, because with the streaming services, with Disney now owning a majority stake of Hulu, I was really concerned about the Fox purchase. I know Fox was going to get sold to somebody, and I guess I'm glad it was Disney, because at least Disney can have a lot of properties under one roof. It's unfortunate that Fox was looking to sell, because that's one less avenue for art. But we're seeing with Hulu, with Disney Plus, with Netflix, with NBC starting a streaming service, they won't all last, but we are seeing this return of control away from us and in the hands of these license holders. And so that window for these things, it is closing. And not to be alarmist about it, it's not the end of the world. It's not, they're not going to start controlling our food supply or anything like that. But access to art, we have better access to that stuff than we've had in a long time. And I do see that it's kind of closing. It's kind of going away. So now is the time.
Very well said.
The original tagline on the poster, I've written this down. I just want to get it out before we run out of time. But it said, you see them on the street. You watch them on TV. You might even vote for one this fall. You think they're people just like you. You're wrong. Dead wrong. Now that is very direct. It's not really shadowing anything. It's just like, oh yeah, politicians they're part of the establishment. They're part of the people that are the secret society.
The Illuminati.
Hey, maybe so. Kind of seems that way sometimes. Kind of seems like it's all just a big joke.
Yeah, this is well, you mentioned Joe Rogan, but he'll hear a lot of those themes on Rogan's podcast if you listen to that show with any frequency. There's some interesting guests on there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Maynard James Keenan from Tool was on there recently, and he basically thinks that humans will be gone in 400 years. And the more he talked about it, I was like,
pretty convincing, right?
Seems legit. Yeah. Seems legit, because we just seem innately to destroy ourselves. But this is a movie that, for all its criticism of the establishment and consumerist culture, it does give the power to the people, and it does say that we have the power to, like, the future is in our hands. We have control over where we go. You just got to wake up. Hashtag woke.
You are your own advocate. It's like you are your own. I hate to say this word because we're talking about consumerism, but it's like you are your own brand. And if you don't stand up for yourself, in your own brand, no one else will. And that's what Roddy Piper did. I heard an interview with him where they asked, did you ever make any decisions you regretted that hurt the business, meaning the business of pro wrestling? And he thought about it and he said, no, I never hurt the business of pro wrestling, but I did hurt the business of Roddy Piper with some of my decisions. And I thought that was very interesting, because he was an outlaw. He was a maverick that, he knew the wrestling promoters, they didn't care about and they cared about themselves and lining their own pockets. Same with studios and, you know, the way they treat directors or the way they treat actors. It's like these guys, once they get older, it's like, okay, we'll just find the next young thing to take your place. And
it has always been like that.
Right. And it's the same with people, you know, it's like, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but you got to.
No, go for it. Go for it. I want to hear what you're going to.
You know, it's, you know, you got to stand up for yourself, because unfortunately when you work for these corporations and things like that, you know, sometimes it's a bunch of bean counters, and they really don't care, you know, like let's talk about comic books, for example. You know, at the end of the day, it's like, oh, we're going to put 5 different variant covers on the same issue, you know, at $5 a pop. It's like, yeah, but the content inside is the same. Like, why are you, you know, but I just hope people, you know, when we talk about like buying the DVDs and or buying comic books, it's like, don't forget why you're doing it. You're doing it for the art. You know, you don't have to have all the different variant covers. You don't have to have the slipcase, you know.
Yeah. That's very well said. And to go back to what we were talking about with this, maybe is not the time for the story to be told again. Those covers are all those multiple variant covers are selling like hotcakes. They're arguably keeping the entire comic book industry afloat,
right?
Just on variant covers.
But you know, that's you and I lived through the 90s, and we saw what happened.
It's not sustainable.
Nope. Oh,
if you've got all your eggs in one basket, and that basket is variant covers, and people get tired of variant covers, you have an empty basket.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I mean, look at that Bubba Hotep trade paperback. It was on Amazon for what, $8? You could get all 5 issues.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were buying it at the time, it was like $4 or $5 an issue?
Yeah, plus
variant. And it's like, I hate to tell people to wait for the trade paperback, but this is weird reverse model that they're doing, and it's not rewarding the true fans. It's almost like you're better off waiting, playing the, you know, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's interesting times for sure. And then would it be inappropriate to just tell the ending of that story, the short story of the book, no. The 8:00 in the morning short story?
I don't think so. No,
it can be read if you want to read it. I think it's not in print for it's a short story, so it would be in an anthology. But I know that there are blogs and websites where people have put it up. If you do want to read it, it's a 5-minute read. But this is where it ends. He gets #woke by the snap of the hypnotist's fingers. He starts to realize that there's all these subversive agents from another planet, these lizard people, and he just starts killing them viciously, violently, slitting their throats, bashing them in the head with the bricks. And then he sees on TV that they're transmitting subliminal messages through the television, so he goes to the TV station and he kills the guy that's reading the news, and then says to the off camera, so the guy's sitting there dead, and the fascinators, is that what I said it was? The fascinators is reading the news, and he kills them. And so he's just sitting there, the camera's focused on him, and he says to it, he's like, "Wake up, people, wake up." And that's the viewing audience is awoken by that. And then he died. Like they had predicted, he gets this call in the story from one of these overlords, and he's like, "Your heart is going to stop at 8:00 in the morning," because they have control over these things. And so he does this thing in the TV studio and causes the awakening. And then 8:00 the next morning, he dies. Says that he was not around to see the revolution the war that began because of him, but because he died at 8:00 in the next morning when his heart stopped. Not that was kind of cool, because in both versions, our hero does not live to. There's a cost,
right? And that's not something you typically see in a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
You know, if that movie, they would probably say, "Hey, can you reshoot the end sequence and have the protagonist survive?" You know, because we got our scorecards back from the audience and from the test screening, and
yeah,
you know, but 'Cause
Focus group didn't like it.
Yeah, focus group, right? But I can see Carpenter saying some choice words if that ever happened to him.
I suspect it did.
Yeah, it's definitely not an upbeat ending, right? We get there.
No, but it does have hope to it because it's that sacrifice that kicks off, hopefully, a revolution. I don't know. I just like that. I think this movie is great. I think it's underrated. I think it's very powerful. I just don't hear enough people talking about it, and I don't know why.
Yeah, it is strange. It's like people know some of the references, but I wonder how many people have really seen it, have watched the movie. It's like a Twilight Zone with network, with all sorts of different things in there. But
it's like Twilight Zone and Network had a baby.
Yeah.
And that baby was a alien mutant creature. But it is. It's got. I don't understand why this is not like a punk rock manifesto for some people. I mean, I guess it is for some people, but
to me, it's cooler that it does have Roddy Piper in it as opposed to like a traditional Hollywood actor.
Yeah.
Because
Kurt Russell.
Let's
that would be the one. If it wasn't Roddy Piper,
right.
It would have been Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell, right. But you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of even, maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe people are just like, it's got a pro wrestler in it and can't take it seriously.
Maybe.
Which, sadly, state of affairs, Roddy Piper made more movies than John Carpenter.
I saw that little bit of trivia.
Yeah.
And he was like, John Carpenter's like, you've made more movies than me. And Roddy Piper's like, yeah, but yours are better. Or yours are good, or whatever he said. All of yours are good.
Yeah, he was very
Which is true. There's some really bad Roddy Piper movies out there.
Yeah, for sure.
He's even in, I'm a Highlander apologist. I love Highlander. And he's in an episode of Highlander, the series, and it's not good. But he's Piper. We love him through the good and the bad. And it couldn't have been easy. He was just doing what he had to do to pay the bills and take opportunities that he saw as worth his time. And I think that this is probably, I don't know. You know a whole lot more about Hell Comes to Frogtown than I do, but I would say this is among the high points of his entire career in Hollywood, acting career.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. For sure. But the times were different too, because don't forget, now, back then, would you have like Hulk Hogan in movies and you had Roddy Piper in movies? Now you've got The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, who of course is the ultimate crossover mainstream star, legitimately went from being the top of the pro wrestling food chain to being an A-lister in Hollywood. And you see others too, you see like a John Cena in a big movie, or I'm leaving a few out. Batista in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Right. But back then it was kind of more like, pro wrestler in a movie, so.
Suburban Commando with Hulk Hogan.
What was the other one? Was it Super Nanny or Mr. Nanny? Paul Hogan?
I think it's Mr. Nanny. I think it was Mr. Nanny. By the way, that scene, the ending scene where the reality is exposed, I think it's hilarious. I think this is a funny movie.
Yeah. I
think that John Carpenter did a lot of so many of these movies that we go back to, like the last time I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, hilarious. Like that movie's really funny. And I was like, it can't just be me. And then I heard, I saw a clip of Toby Hooper talking about, he was like, people did not recognize the humor in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I made it really obvious for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I was like, there we go. It's not just me. It was there. And this movie is a very funny movie, like a car commercial where the guy turns around and he's an alien. And then it's funny talking about the violence in movies. And then it's an alien talking. A lot of cultural criticism.
But he ends it on a high note, giving the finger to the man, so to speak.
Yep.
Very defining.
I think that probably sums up the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Give the man the finger. Well, I think we did. A pretty good job here talking about the merits of this movie, the themes of this movie, and why we love it. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I just I hope we get more people to watch this movie, even if it's a couple, by shining a light on it, because it deserves to be seen. You know, whether you're a fan of Roddy Piper or John Carpenter or just movies like this that don't really seem to be made anymore. You know.
Well, I mean, it's an 80s movie, so it's got that classic 80s movie vibe. It's a John Carpenter movie, so horror fans should flock to it. It's got Roddy Piper in it, so wrestling fans should be into it. And then it's a movie that has a powerful message that is still relevant and that is approached in a fun, anti-authoritarian, middle finger flipping way. And there's just so much to love here. Yeah, hopefully, like you said, hopefully we can just show a little more love to it, get a little more people, a few more people to check it out, because it's I don't know that it's criminally underrated, but I just don't think enough people talk about it. It doesn't have the reverence that other Carpenter movies have. That's a shame.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick mention to you as well, because when we were discussing this, and I said to you I had some concerns because I just don't know if enough people have seen this, and you're like, it doesn't matter, we're doing it for us.
Yeah,
and that's the spirit of Serial at Midnight. It's like, you know, guys, we've got a pretty tight knit group here. Heath does, and it's like everything he does, it's kind of like for the group. So I just want to, if anybody, I get to talk a lot with Heath, and you know, he's like Roddy Piper. He's the real deal. What you see is pretty much what you get. And just shout out to you, buddy, and
well, thank you.
Everything you've built over at Serial at Midnight.
So Heath is the equivalent of Roddy Piper. I think that's the takeaway.
And you're all out of bubblegum.
All out of bubblegum. Thank you. Hey, where can people give them your media links? Where do you, in the spirit of this movie, what social media links can we check you out on?
Oh, just Google me. No, just pretty much everything is at Jab Kuga. So just whatever, stop by, say hi. I don't have a website or anything like that, but you'll find me. I'm out there. Put on your glasses.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Put on your glasses. Take out that bubble gum. You'll know where to go. Well, thank you very much for talking with me, doing this commentary for They Live. I really enjoy this. I'm proud of this. This is good. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And guys, thank you for listening. Weigh in the comments wherever you're watching this video or listening to this audio commentary. We would love to know what you think about They Live, what you think about Roddy Piper. Let's just keep the conversation going. So engage. The community is so important, and we do appreciate you guys. So we're going to sign off, but thanks. And until next time, we will catch you later.